My name is Dylan Mercer. I'm 42 years old and have spent the last 15 years building the backbone of the security architecture at Verexon Technologies. I'm not just someone who shows up and does the job. I've lived and breathed this company since it was still fighting to stay relevant in a crowded market. Back then, our department didn't even have a nameplate. Now it's the most profitable unit in the entire organization. And a big part of that is because of me. People in the industry know me as the guy who doesn't cut corners. Precision, integrity, foresight, that's how I've always worked. And while the boardroom might not say it out loud, the internal audits, client retention numbers, and quarterly reports all point in the same direction. I was why Verexon was safe, respected, and ahead of the curve. But inside the company, the executive team treated me like wallpaper. Useful, always there, but never once invited into their inner circle. I kept telling myself it was only a matter of time. After all, I had earned it. This year was supposed to be it. Promotion talks were circling, and everyone assumed I'd be made vice president. Even some of the junior staff were already congratulating me in hushed tones. At home, things were different, or at least they used to be. My wife, Isabel, had once been the constant I could rely on. We met during a project I led at her father's logistics company. He was impressed with how I handled their crisis, and even more impressed that Isabel and I clicked so effortlessly. Her father, Franklin Burke, is a giant in the business world. His approval had felt like winning the lottery. We got married less than a year later. For a while, it felt like everything in life was aligning. We bought a house in the Washington Park area of Denver, a place with tall windows and warm wood floors. It wasn't flashy, but it was ours. I thought we were building something strong. But lately, something in Isabel had shifted. She used to greet me with warmth, stories, and laughter. Now, her smiles felt strained, and her stories were vague or cut short. She started staying out late, book club, work dinners, or sometimes just needed space. At first, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. We all have rough patches, and I didn't want to be the paranoid husband who imagined ghosts where there were none. But I wasn't imagining the silence. The late nights turned into overnights. Her excuses began to sound rehearsed. When I'd ask questions, she'd act like I was being dramatic, controlling, or even. The same woman who once left sticky notes in my lunchbox now barely looked up from her phone when I walked in. I should have trusted my instincts earlier. But after years of loyalty to my company and my marriage, I had gotten used to trusting systems. Systems don't lie. People do. I don't consider myself a suspicious man by nature. My job has always been to detect threats, but only where they exist, not where emotions try to invent them. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that Isabel's distance wasn't just about stress or a rough patch. Something was off, and my gut, the same one that had helped me prevent millions in data breaches, kept tightening every time she said, "Don't wait up." So I did what I do best. Quietly, methodically, I started watching. At Verexon, we've developed some of the most advanced security tools in the private sector. Firewalls that think, surveillance systems that learn, detection protocols that predict behavior patterns. I didn't need to hack anything. I just used the tools I helped design. And with a few discrete keystrokes, I gained visibility into Isabel's world. What I found made my chest burn. There were messages, hundreds of them. Encrypted chats, private emails routed through dummy accounts, and calendar events marked with vague labels like board dinner or strategy sync. But the language between her and the other party was unmistakable. Intimate, familiar, calculated. The name on the other end? Logan Burke, CEO of Verexon Technologies. The same man who shook my hand last week and told me, "Big things are coming your way, Dylan." The same man who had once invited Isabel and me to his home for a charity gala. I trusted him, worked late to support his vision, defended his decisions even when others on the team questioned his ethics. And now I was reading flirtations and confessions between him and my wife, like it was some twisted corporate romance novel. But it didn't stop there. Buried in one of their encrypted threads was a folder link titled Phoenix Plan. At first, I thought it was a merger file. But when I opened it, I felt the ground beneath me shift. Inside were scanned copies of legal paperwork, divorce drafts. Shareholder transfer forms. A document detailing Isabel's promotion to vice president, effective the following quarter. All signed, all stamped. I wasn't just being cheated on. I was being removed. Cleanly. Strategically. The plan was brutal in its elegance. Step 1. Isabel leverages our marriage to get access to my decision-making power and insight. Step 2. She feeds that intel to Logan, who uses it to manipulate investor sentiment and restructure the board. Step 3. Isabel gets the VP role, spins the narrative that I was unstable and unfit, and initiates a quiet divorce. Step 4. My shares, my hard-earned equity in this company, would be frozen, contested in court, and likely sold back to the company at a pre-agreed valuation. A valuation that Logan would set. They had dotted every I, crossed every T. The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was professional, financial, existential. They hadn't just planned to destroy my career. They planned to erase me, using my own silence and loyalty against me. I sat in my home office, eyes fixed on the screen, fingers frozen over the keyboard. They thought I'd never find out. They thought I was too trusting, too devoted, too predictable. What they forgot was that I was the architect of Verexon's surveillance framework. I had built the very system they were trying to use to destroy me. And I had just found my way in. The night of the promotion party felt surreal, like stepping into a dream I didn't remember having, or a nightmare I was about to wake up from. Verexon headquarters had been transformed for the occasion. Blue and silver uplighting danced along the glass walls. A jazz quartet played softly in the corner while executives in tailored suits toasted with crystal flutes. Everything about the event screamed elegance and triumph. Except, none of it felt like mine. I arrived right on time, dressed in a charcoal suit with a subtle pinstripe. Polished. Neutral. Invisible. Just the way they liked me. As I stepped onto the rooftop terrace where the event was being held, I saw Isabel laughing by the bar with Logan. She wore a deep green dress that shimmered like envy itself. She looked confident, radiant, even proud. I didn't break my stride. I greeted the board members, shook hands, made polite jokes, and accepted champagne I wouldn't drink. I smiled, even when I saw her slip her hand around Logan's arm. I smiled because they were watching me, expecting a crack. A flicker. A slip-up. But they didn't get one. Then came the moment. Logan tapped his glass, and the room slowly quieted. He stood beside Isabel. No, I refuse to call her that now. Beside Natalie. The woman who once said my silence made her feel safe, now smiles at the man who turned my life into a strategy meeting. Tonight, Logan began, we celebrate not just growth but evolution. Verexon is stepping into a new era, and we need leadership that reflects where we're headed. He looked straight at me when he said it, then turned to the crowd. I'm honored to announce our new Vice President of Strategic Operations, someone who has shown unmatched intuition, leadership, and passion. Please join me in congratulating Natalie Burke. Applause erupted. Cameras flashed. Natalie placed a hand over her chest as if she were shocked. She wasn't. She knew. She'd known for months. She looked at me like she expected tears, an outburst, something she could later label unprofessional behavior. But I only clapped. I walked up to her, leaned in as if to offer a hug, and whispered, "You earned this." She gave a tight-lipped smile, not sure what to make of it. Behind that smile, I had already launched Operation Glasshouse. They thought my silence meant surrender. What it meant was focus. For the past 3 weeks, while they plotted my downfall, I built something else. A silent protocol seeded deep into Verexon's infrastructure. Invisible to standard scans. Buried in maintenance scripts and firewall logs. It watched. It learned. It mirrored data and created a shadow network, one that recorded every confidential message, every financial transaction, and every unauthorized access. The name Glasshouse wasn't random, because in this system, every secret had windows. I had everything. Financial records of insider trading, call logs that proved Logan used private company jets for personal trips, and files showing how Natalie accessed my restricted files using my credentials. I didn't need to explode. I just needed to watch them burn themselves down from the inside. Logan raised a toast. Natalie stood beside him like a queen who never paid for her crown. And I smiled wider than ever, because their applause echoed inside a structure made of glass, and I was the one holding the first stone. I spent the week after the party doing what I do best, building. While Logan basked in the spotlight and Natalie took her seat at the VP's desk, I moved quietly in the shadows. The celebration had been their peak. What followed was going to be their descent. Every smile they exchanged at work, every press release, every flattering comment from board members, it all made what I was about to do feel like justice in motion. First, I activated my contingency plans. Years ago, I'd built secure, air-gapped systems that weren't connected to Virexon's network, completely isolated and invisible to their IT department. Just in case. Most thought it was paranoia. I called it insurance. These drives held encrypted backups of my research, designs, prototype logs, and the earliest foundations of what made our security division the company's crown jewel. More importantly, they contained a complete map of the corruption that had been quietly infecting the company. I began consolidating my assets, liquidating investments, moving funds into protected trusts, and locking down everything I owned under LLCs and anonymous entities. The house in Washington Park? Already transferred. My stocks? Secured offshore under new protections. Natalie wouldn't get a cent without a fight, and even then, she'd only get what I allowed her to. Once my defenses were set, I turned my focus back to the company. Glass House was humming along, feeding me streams of information. I tracked emails, cloud activity, voice-to-text transcripts from Logan's private meetings, and every access log Natalie triggered in the system. They weren't careful. Not anymore. They thought they had won. But the real game had just begun. I needed help, and there was only one person I trusted. Dominic Russo. We'd worked together in the early years of Virexon. He was now head of a boutique digital forensics firm, one of the best in the business. Dom had seen my highs and lows, stood by me when we were coding through nights and debugging through weekends. He knew me, and he knew I wouldn't come to him unless it was serious. We met in the back of a small coffee shop in Lodo. I slid a secure drive across the table, and as he plugged it into his laptop, his eyebrows rose. "Holy hell, Dylan," he muttered. "You've been busy." I nodded. "I need full verification on everything. Chain of custody, IP origins, timestamps. We're going to court eventually. This has to be airtight." Dom's expression shifted from curiosity to concern. "This isn't just about them screwing you over, is it?" I leaned back. "Logan's planning to sell off Virexon's back-end systems, our AI framework, our custom encryption software, everything, to a shell company overseas. And he's setting Natalie up to take the fall." Dom stared at me for a moment, then shut his laptop. "All right, I'm in." With Dom's help, I started building the final case. We recovered deleted call logs between Logan and a man named Eric Van Kessler, a known corporate raider based in Amsterdam. They'd been discussing asset transfers, off-the-books payments, and contracts designed to route Virexon's intellectual property through Natalie's signature. Natalie was more than just complicit, she was the exit strategy. Logan would offload the assets, collapse Virexon's internal value, and pin the whole thing on her. She'd be left facing financial fraud charges and corporate espionage claims. And me? I was supposed to be long gone. Ruined, irrelevant, erased. Instead, I was listening to their strategy meetings in real time. I created backups of every transaction, every message. Dom worked with a retired federal compliance officer to authenticate and organize the evidence into a legal packet. When the time came, I wouldn't just expose them, I'd bury them in truth. But I wasn't rushing. I was patient. Because revenge is best served when the guilty don't see the blade until it's already at their throat. And I was the architect of every piece about to fall. Monday morning arrived with a stillness that felt like the calm before a hurricane. I stood in my home office, fully dressed in a crisp navy suit, though I had nowhere to be. Not in the traditional sense. My battleground wasn't a boardroom. Not today. It was the company's digital spine, servers, emails, backups, internal databases. And all I needed was one command. I pressed enter. Operation Glass House went live. Within minutes, the network at Verexon was flooded with internal memos, flagged documents, and time-stamped voice transcriptions. Every file had my watermark and a signature chain that led directly to Logan Burke. Emails between him and Eric Van Kessler popped up in the board members' inboxes, marked urgent. Legal flagged dozens of financial transactions routed through shell accounts in Curacao. Anonymous employees received logs of encrypted conversations detailing Logan's illegal sale of proprietary software and Natalie's digital fingerprints on all of it. The company's Slack channels lit up with confusion. Phones rang off the hook. I sat back and watched from my secure console as the first domino tipped. By 9:30 a.m., Natalie was summoned into a closed-door emergency meeting. By 9:47, she texted me, "What did you do?" I didn't reply. By 10:05, Logan burst into the server control center and demanded a trace. But by then it was too late. I had built the architecture in layers. What they were seeing was only a copy of the evidence. The real files were already in the hands of Verexon's compliance team, legal advisors, and most importantly, 3 investigative journalists who had been sitting on stories about Logan's questionable practices for years, waiting for proof. At 11:12, Logan stormed into my house. I knew he would. I was waiting. He didn't knock. He barged in like a man trying to salvage a collapsing empire. His face was pale, his suit disheveled, tie askew. The calm, smug I once shook hands with was gone. "You think this is going to work?" he hissed, slamming a folder on my dining table. "You think they're going to believe you over me?" I looked him in the eye. "They don't have to believe me, Logan. They have to believe the logs. The paper trail. The whistleblower statement. The forensic audits. And the video of you saying, and I quote, 'If Natalie takes the heat, we both walk away clean.'" His mouth opened, but no words came out. "Checkmate," I added quietly. He lunged toward the folder like it might somehow save him. But it wouldn't. Nothing would. An hour later, the board called an emergency session. By the end of the day, Logan was fired with immediate effect. His assets were frozen pending investigation. Natalie's promotion was revoked. She was placed on administrative leave and named in the upcoming internal audit. The board sent a formal email to me, offering a public apology and begging me to return as Chief Security Officer with expanded oversight and a seat at the executive table. I didn't even finish reading it before closing the tab. Let them clean their mess. I had already bought the building across the street, a sleek, private workspace I named Lighthouse. By Tuesday morning, I was on my own time, building something new. Something clean. Something mine. The empire they tried to destroy me for? They can keep the wreckage. I'm not coming back. By Wednesday, I knew they wouldn't go quietly. Logan and Natalie had built their lives on control, deception, and power. Losing all of that in 48 hours? That kind of fall doesn't breed reflection, it breeds retaliation. It started subtly. A few unexpected calls from banks. 2 flagged transactions. Then, a notice from my brokerage that a freeze had been requested on several of my accounts, citing pending fraud investigation. I smiled. They'd taken the bait. Long before Operation Glass House went live, I had created decoy accounts, mirror profiles with just enough activity and assets to look legitimate. These accounts were held under names that resembled my real trusts, but they weren't tied to anything of actual value. All they contained were test deposits, recycled metadata, and a few harmless breadcrumbs. It was these false accounts that Logan and Natalie tried to freeze. And I let them. The moment they initiated contact with those institutions, my embedded tracing software lit up. Their legal proxies were flagged, metadata tracked, and IP addresses logged. Within hours, I had a clear map of their retaliation network, from Logan's assistant to Natalie's newly hired reputation consultant in Los Angeles. Then came the media leaks. 2 blogs ran stories about me misappropriating company funds and emotionally compromising Natalie during our marriage. One claimed I'd fabricated my resume. Another hinted I had ties to international data brokers. But none of it stuck. Because I had prepared for this too. Every client I ever worked with had received a discreet message from me 3 days earlier, before the party. A personal email, crafted with calm professionalism, outlining that I was stepping back due to emerging concerns at the executive level. No details, just enough to hint that the truth was on my side. I also forwarded clean audit reports, legal endorsements from compliance experts, and my patent logs, all time-stamped, verified, and locked in third-party archives. So when the media storm hit, the people who mattered didn't flinch. If anything, they reached out asking how they could help. But Logan and Natalie weren't finished. Not yet. Through a traced communication between Logan and a private cybersecurity contractor, I discovered something chilling: the Nightshade Protocol. A setup. They were building a fake paper trail, fabricated documents, synthetic voice clips, and deep fake videos designed to show me confessing to data theft. The plan was to anonymously deliver these files to federal regulators and frame me as the architect behind a non-existent corporate espionage ring. They wanted to end me. Permanently. But they forgot who they were up against. The moment their contractor downloaded the Nightshade framework onto a staging server, my embedded crawler activated. I cloned the server within 27 seconds, archived every file, and locked it behind a blockchain timestamp. Now I had the original plan in full. They had armed the weapon, and I had captured it before it fired. They thought they were playing chess. But I had been on the board all along. Friday evening, just as the sky began to dip into amber hues over the Colorado foothills, Dominic and I drove up the narrow trail leading to a secluded lake house tucked beneath a thicket of tall pines. The property had once belonged to a Verexan investor, someone Logan had acquired out of the company years ago. I had installed the original security system myself, back when trust was something I still gave freely. And now, that trust had become leverage. Logan and Natalie thought they were safe out here. Off-grid. No cameras. No eyes. No accountability. But the system was never really turned off. Dominic pulled the SUV behind a patch of thick trees and killed the engine. I tapped into the house's private network from a secure tablet. The interface lit up in my hands. Thermals showed 2 heat signatures inside, both pacing the main room. I locked the front door. Then the back. Windows, basement hatch, garage, sealed. Cameras inside the cabin activated one by one. It was time. Dominic nodded. Ready. I pushed the speaker button and spoke into the mic. Hello, Logan. Inside the cabin, I watched him stop in his tracks. Natalie turned slowly toward the camera above the fireplace. I continued, you always did like using other people's systems. It's poetic that the house you're hiding in is listening to every word. Logan ran to the door. Nothing. You're locked in, I said calmly. No fire exits. No hidden keypads. This house doesn't answer to you. He turned and grabbed Natalie's arm. We're leaving. Now. That's when I stepped through the front door. The system recognized my ID immediately and disengaged the security for 1 second, just enough to let me in. Logan froze as I entered, Dominic just behind me. I kept my distance, hands open at my sides. Logan's eyes were wild. You're insane. I glanced at Natalie. Her face was pale. Gone was the confidence, the ambition, the mask. Just panic. I'm not here to argue, I said. I'm here to make sure the truth doesn't walk out of this house. Logan reached into his coat. Dominic saw it first. He's got a... The moment I saw the metal glint, I was moving. No hesitation. I tackled Logan into the wall. The gun hit the floor with a heavy thud, sliding under the coffee table. Dominic kicked it away and pinned him down. Natalie shrieked and backed into the corner. You brought a weapon to a digital war, I said, breathing hard, pressing my knee into Logan's chest. Outside, red and blue lights painted the trees. Right on schedule. The FBI stormed the property within seconds. Guns drawn. Shouts echoing. Dominic stepped back with his hands up. There is my... 2 agents grabbed Logan. Another cuffed Natalie, who didn't even protest. She just stared at me, lips trembling. An agent approached. You're Dylan Mercer? I nodded. Yes. All files, evidence, and surveillance logs have been sent to your encrypted drop server. Passwords match the chain I sent this morning. He gave a short nod. We've got it. Solid work, Mr. Mercer. As they dragged Logan past me, he lunged one last time. You think this is justice? You'll regret this. I looked him in the eyes, calm, firm, done. No, Logan. I think this is justice. And regret? That belongs to you. The agents pulled him outside. And just like that, the glass house shattered. Not mine. Natalie broke first. Less than a week after her arrest, she reached out through her attorney, requesting a meeting. I agreed, not out of interest, but for closure. We met at a neutral office downtown, the kind of sterile space used for quiet settlements and quieter endings. She looked like a shadow of the woman I once knew. No makeup, no performance, no facade. Just a plain black sweater, trembling hands, and a signed declaration of full asset forfeiture. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she whispered, eyes downcast. But I didn't know Logan's full plan until it was too late. I didn't want it to end like this. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. She slid the paperwork across the table. Full surrender of marital property, no contest to divorce, no claims against anything tied to my name. The divorce was finalized in under 2 weeks. Logan, on the other hand, refused to go quietly. He tried to fight. Denied every charge. Blamed Natalie. Blamed me. Even claimed the documents were forged, until the forensic teams revealed biometric verification logs, voice recordings, and hidden surveillance pulled straight from the Nightshade server. He was convicted on 13 counts, including corporate fraud, obstruction of justice, and attempted data sabotage. The courtroom was silent as the judge read his sentence, 27 years in federal prison without parole. He didn't even look at me when they let him out. But I wasn't there for vengeance. I was there to watch a system hold a man accountable who believed he'd built himself above it. When the dust settled, I walked away from it all. The board at Vertex sent flowers. Then emails. Then a formal letter offering me full reinstatement, naming me Chief Operating Officer with equity and a 7-figure bonus. I didn't even blink before turning it down. Why would I return to a structure I had to tear down just to prove the truth? Instead, I started something of my own. Phoenix Security Solutions. It began with 2 rooms, 1 server rack, and 3 people I trusted. Now, it's on track to become the most secure private intelligence firm in the country. We don't just protect companies. We audit their ethics, train their leadership, and design infrastructures with built-in accountability. Real security from the inside out. My story traveled far beyond Denver. Agencies reached out, first local, then federal. The Department of Justice. Homeland Security. Even an unnamed intelligence group. They didn't just want access to my systems. They wanted to know how a man could dismantle a conspiracy using nothing but foresight, precision, and silence. I told them the truth. It wasn't silence. It was clarity. People like Logan built their empires on smoke and mirrors. But in a world made of glass, all it takes is one crack to bring the whole house down. And I was never the one breaking in. I was always the architect. 1 year later, the world looked nothing like it did before. Phoenix Security Solutions had exploded into something far greater than I imagined. What started as a quiet counter to corporate decay became the industry's gold standard for cyber intelligence and ethical protection. We weren't just hired, we were trusted. Our clientele included Fortune 500 companies, political think tanks, and even international nonprofits working in high-risk zones. We operated out of a high-rise in Denver now, but our influence spanned both coasts and crossed borders. Every major tech summit had a Phoenix rep speaking. Every major breach, we were called in to assess and clean up. The very firms that once questioned my silence now call it brilliance. And yet, despite the pace, the prestige, and the recognition, I stayed grounded. My circle stayed small. Dominic now ran our Special Investigations division. The team I built worked like a living system, each one trained to never mistake power for trust. One Tuesday morning, I was in the conference room reviewing an AI-based breach detection model when my assistant entered quietly. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "there's someone from the Department of Homeland Security here to see you. She says it's urgent." Her name was Sofia Vega. Late 30s, poised, analytical. She didn't offer a business card. Just credentials, a quiet smile, and a closed briefcase. "I've been following your work since Virexin," she said. "You built something no agency has managed to replicate. Clean, accurate, and untouchable. We'd like to discuss a collaboration." "What kind of collaboration?" I asked. She opened the briefcase and slid a thick file across the table. Satellite photos. Network maps. Unmarked locations. "There's a cyber weapon we've been tracking. International origins. No footprint. We think it's being used to manipulate financial markets and elections in multiple countries. We don't need just defense. We need someone who can think like a saboteur." I leaned back in my chair, scanning the data. "We want Phoenix to lead the counter-op," she said. Discreetly. "Report directly to me. Off books." "I'll consider it," I replied. But even then, I knew the answer. After she left, I sat for a long time, watching the snow fall against the window. The city looked clean, quiet, almost innocent. It reminded me of a time before betrayal had become a language I understood. That same week, I got an unexpected message. A private invitation. From Nathaniel Burke. We met at an upscale restaurant overlooking Cherry Creek. He looked older than I remembered. Smaller, somehow. The man who once called me the best decision Natalie ever made now sat across from me, swallowing guilt with his wine. "I knew she had flaws," he said after the first course. "But I never expected this. I believed in Logan. That was my mistake." He slid an envelope toward me. "I don't want to make excuses," he said. "I just want you to know, some of us see now. You were never the problem." I didn't touch the envelope. I didn't need validation from a man who had once traded respect for politics. "Keep it," I said. "Just do better." I walked out before dessert. That night, I found myself alone on the rooftop of the Phoenix building. Lights stretched endlessly below, but I wasn't looking at the skyline. I was remembering. Every betrayal. Every plan. Every moment, I chose to keep going instead of collapsing. Justice wasn't a moment. It was forged, piece by piece, in the quiet. In fire. In restraint. Natalie taught me betrayal. Logan taught me war. But I taught myself how to rise. Now, every morning, I wake up before dawn. I pour my coffee. I open the systems. I listen to the silence before the world starts shouting. Every day is Monday. And now, it belongs to me.